Hi, I'm Robert Strand, the Executive Director of the Center for Responsible Business at Berkeley Haas. Each semester, the Center for Responsible Business puts on the Peterson Series, which is our flagship speaker series in which we encourage conversations about topics of corporate responsibility and sustainability here at UC Berkeley. Today I'm joined by Marianne Barner, formerly of IKEA, who is one of our panelists for today's Peterson Series events. Marianne, welcome. So good to have you.
Thank you very much, Robert, and I'm happy to be here.
Marianne, you had a 20-year career at IKEA where you were responsible for a number of things, including prevention of child labor. Many individuals who have similar roles to yours have focused on a zero-tolerance policy as an end-all for engagement of prevention of child labor. You chose to take IKEA to go beyond just that for a more engaged approach with suppliers. Why?
When we first were faced with the issue of child labor, we got a very good help from Save the Children Sweden. And they were very, very firm with us that everything you do shall be in the best interests of the child. And that became the guide for us how to act. And it is about a zero tolerance. It is about not accepting child labor. At the same time, it is to take a responsibility for children. And in the case you find child labor, and find children working, then it is the responsibility of the supplier to make sure that the children are better off. But then we have the little word prevention. It is about addressing the root causes of child labor so that child labor doesn't at all occur. And that was the most important action we took beginning in 2000 in partnership with UNICEF, Save the Children, and later also UNDP.
So Marianne, it strikes me as, from a historical context, IKEA took a very progressive approach to maybe assume more responsibility beyond what was the norm at the time. Can you talk a little bit about the historical progression of how IKEA and maybe some other companies have engaged with the prevention of child labor and where they're doing perhaps more than what at that beginning in the 90s we're doing?
I think that goes back to what I mentioned earlier with that sentence from the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, with everything you do shall be in the best interests of the child. And then to close the door to a supplier where you perhaps have found child labor and walk away and don't work with that supplier, that is not in the best interest of the child. In the best interest of the child is to work closely with the supplier and with the supplier's supplier perhaps and with their staff to understand about child rights and again prevent that children are employed. And then it's also with the knowledge that it's about all children. It's not only about children who perhaps are working, but it's about all children.
So with respect to this phrase, in the best interest of the child, as I reflect upon traditional business school education and strategy work about things being in the best interest of the company, what you're saying here, this subtle phrase of in the best interest of the child, it strikes me as something that could be somewhat revolutionary of sorts. Could you talk about how this phrase, in the best interest of the child, helped to guide decision-making and the strategy within IKEA?
It helped a lot. Over the years, it has given us the guidance on, I would say, more or less everything. You just have to say it a couple of times, and then you feel, yeah, that is the way we should do it. Because everything you do, I mean, it's unique. When you go back to that sentence, then you find a guidance. And that really guided us also into this, that we went beyond the supply chain and addressed the root causes in a much more holistic way than at that time was usual. Today we see it, and I'm happy about that. I'm happy about that. This is something unique. This is not something unique today. It was pretty unique in the late 90s, but today this is how most companies today act, and this to address the root causes is also something that we hear more and more about. So things have evolved in a very good way, I would say.
And if I could ask one final question, Marianne. In business, we've often focused on competition and achieving competitive advantage. And what you've offered us here today is a conversation that strikes me as focusing on cooperation and cooperating with NGO like Save the Children, government organization like UNICEF, maybe even competitors. Can you talk about the importance of cooperation to further sustainability initiatives such as the prevention of child labor?
I think it's important that we think bigger and that we think in terms of that we are some sort of enabler and helping a development and a catalyst for development. And complex issues like child labor, it's pretty complex. Then it's much better that we join forces, and that can be joining forces within the industry, it can be over industry borders too. And there are numerous examples of that today. And I think also what we see today is that the cooperation, joining forces, some words I really like, between, as you said, the UN, NGO, well, civil society together with corporations or groups of corporations. That is what moves things in a much better, and that helps us to scale up, because I believe so much in the scaling up to really achieve sustainable development in issue, if it's about prevention of child labor or any other issue.
Marianne, on a personal note, I want to say thank you so much for coming to Berkeley Haas. You are an inspiration to myself, and I know now from your engagement here with students here, an inspiration for a number of students, and also through the Peterson Series events, reaching a broader community of people to share your story and experiences and to help to affect change for the positive. Marianne, thank you so very much for your time and for coming here to Berkeley Haas.
And thank you, Robert, for inviting me.